Let's begin this bulletin with some breaking updates. Well, this is the latest in the Agniveers scheme, where Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has approved a proposal to reserve 10% of job vacancies in Ministry of Defence for Agniveers, meeting requisite eligibility criteria. Necessary amendments to relevant recruitment rules will be undertaken to implement these provisions. Defence public sector undertakings will be advised to make similar amendments to their respective recruitment rules. Necessary age relaxation provision will also be made. Now, news editor Nikunj joins me on the broadcast. Nikunj, so what is the latest in this? We're seeing the Defence Minister has approved a proposal of 10% of job vacancies. Of course, this in addition to the age relaxation that was announced earlier.
Well, absolutely. There are three big relaxations post facto that government has announced till now. One, of course, was the age relaxation that you mentioned. This morning, the Home Minister came out and said that he is reserving in all paramilitary 10% jobs for Agniveers, people who will be recruited through that channel of recruitment in the Ministry of Defence and Armed Forces from henceforth. Now, the Defence Minister, Raksha Mantri himself, has come out and said that in the defence establishment, all jobs will have a 10% special reservation provision for Agniveers, people, army jawans who would be recruited through this newly carved out scheme of the government. So after the announcement, first the age relaxation, and now two key recruiters, other than the fact that there are two key ministries, Defence and Home are one of the biggest recruiters in the in the Government of India scheme of things for the central government jobs. And therefore, these announcements from the Home and Defence Ministers subsequently are very, very important. Now, whether they are able to allay the fears, whether they are able to assuage the feelings of the young men who are protesting on the streets, whether they buy the argument of the government is something yet to be seen. However, government from its side seems to be making amends to its original proposal. The opposition, of course, then will be quick to say that, all of this you should have thought through before you announce the scheme, and why are always post facto announcements made? And they are obviously questioning the government similar on the lines of the changes that the government made in the demonetization scheme. So while the government keeps amending its position, keeping in mind the expressed sensibilities of the young men and women protesting on the street, the opposition, of course, will continue to beat the government with the handle that you don't think through the schemes that you're announcing and you rush through them, and only post facto changes are made once you sense the protest or the protestation from the concerned constituency.
Right, Nikunj. So certainly opposition raising a point there, asking if the government even thought through this entire scheme. Thank you so much, Nikunj, for joining us with all those details. I'm also joined by Maroof Raza, Group Consultant Editor of Times Network. Thank you so much for speaking to Mirror now. Does this come as a face saver? Is the government in a damage control mode, considering all of these relaxations and job vacancy quotas are being announced after the Agniveers scheme backlash?
Yes, it is both a face saver and a damage control exercise, because quite clearly, as has been alleged by some parties, that everyone was not taken on board, it is now becoming evident because they did not take everybody on board. There were ideas that were not explored sufficiently. I've been saying from day one, it doesn't make sense to select 46,000 people and then keep only 4,600 out of them. Because in any case, the selection of the entire 46,000 would be based on similar criteria that you normally select soldiers for. So therefore, they would be physically fit, mentally agile, and have the willingness to serve. And once put through the training, they can be easily absorbed in a whole lot of paramilitary and affiliated organizations of the Defense and Home Ministry. I don't know why there is a reluctance not to absorb them, because it's very well known that the Army's operating and training standards are higher than that of the paramilitary. So they can easily fit into the system there, unless the level of sincerity and commitment and integrity that is implemented in their minds while they train here is something that is worrying to the paramilitary and others. Why are they not willing to take trained people who the government has sidestepped them simply because of financial concerns? This whole exercise is to trim down the outgoings of the defense budget. And the second thing is that 46,000 is not a very large number annually to be absorbed across the board. It's not that you are so adequately equipped with manpower that you don't want to absorb anything extra that comes your way. Every organization of the government and the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home has what they call a wastage rate, which means people get retired, they get pensionable, and they move on. And the other two ideas that are not being explored, and I wouldn't be surprised if it also is announced in a few days, that you increase the color service of people in military service. So that means if a guy goes home with 35 to 40 years of age, because you want a young army, you also need people of a higher age group to provide leadership.
Right.
Why don't you retain them longer? Why do you want to send them home? Because this is what has been happening from the British colonial era days. Today, a person who's 40 is operating and physically fit as much as somebody was 30, 10 years ago. So you can continue to keep them and not make them pensionable and use them. And the second thing is, why doesn't the government explore opportunities for their absorption also in corporate and security organizations outside the Government of India undertakings?
Right.
After all, everybody is willing to grab somebody who has military experience and training. So why not security services, where you might be surprised to know that while the armed forces of India collectively are about 1.5 million, the private security services are employing people up to 5 million. They're 4 times the size of the armed forces. So they would be very happy to absorb these people. Why don't the government reach out to them and do a deal that we are going to give you a trained chap with some awareness and some financial security that is already built into this arrangement? So quite clearly, the allegations this hasn't been thought through are right. And if it wasn't, the government would not be shifting its goalpost every day.
That's right. A very, an important point you've made here, that looks like the government is shifting its goalpost as every passing date announces a new relaxation and a new benefit after the youth, perhaps if they don't make the cut and are not retained in that 25%, they may have to leave the armed forces. We leave it there. Thank you so much, Maroof, for joining us with all those inputs. While it's